respected Shri Ram Madhav ji, K. Siddhartha sir, who's been kind of a mentor for me, VC Saab, Nalin ji, our publishers, Samir bhai, and Sanjay Sharma ji, and all the respected guests that have gathered today for the launch of this book. This is the first book of mine, and I come from the state of Gujarat. And when you say Gujarat, what that means is, people are going to immediately link that to money, right? So when I talk about this book on geopolitics, I would like to take you all to the journey of the concept of money. The human civilization has always been using for several centuries what we call as a barter system of trade. Now, we all know what limitations the barter system of trade would have in terms of that we have transgressed towards a currency formulas where we have coins and then the currency notes, and now the digital currency is the new thing which is coming in. So we all are aware of what limitations the barter system would have had. But then I would like to take you back to history, specifically about the barter system, because we need to dwell upon as a society what benefits the barter system carried. While if that was what was working for centuries, then there must have been some wisdom as well. So I would like to dwell upon some portion of that because my part is more of geoeconomics. So when you talk about the positives of the barter system, you realize that there always has to be an end product to exchange with the other party. So you need to have an end product, then only you are going to get another end product in the exchange or an end service in exchange, which means the entire family or the community unit which is producing that end product, end user product, is most probably not going to overproduce, not going to underproduce it. And by and large, with the effect of that, you are not going to have an inflationary society. Now, when you do not have an inflationary society, what does that mean is that the family unit and the community unit entrepreneurship is able to have a joint family corpus seed funding for entrepreneurship, wherein you do not require a job model for the society. Now, what else happens with the barter system is, since you do not have overproduction, you do not have underproduction, you also do not have the concept of unemployment, because the entire family unit is involved end to end for the value addition which is required for producing that end product. There is no concept of unemployment, neither a concept of inflation in that society, neither the concept of exploitation of natural resources, right? These are the benefits of the barter system which the humanity lost. Now, when we transition towards coins and the paper currencies, what happens is that, as I say, that gold is what is Sanatana. That's हमारे जितने भी भगवान हैं, आप अगर चलचित्र देखेंगे तो पूरे गोल्ड में लदे पाए जाते हैं, because that is the civilizational wisdom of Sanatana. So when currencies started into being, be it coins or the paper notes, they were hooked to a gold standard. Right, some quantity ounce of gold reserves would represent the currency that the nation can print. Now what happens when the baton of leadership went from UK to the United States, the other side of the Atlantic? The pound, which was the reserve currency, was replaced by dollar as the new reserve currency of the world. What is the privilege, the exorbitant privilege which we call for the dollar? You imagine 180 plus nations parking their savings in a currency. Why they select dollar? Do they trust dollar? This is a confusion among many of us. that dollar has the trust. It's a wrong notion. The trust is about the endless printing capacity of the dollar because of the reserve currency status that it had. It is not because United States has some brilliant brains, not because the United States economy is great, not because it has some great army. It is just because of the endless printing capacity, because 180 plus nations have killed the demand of their own national currencies to promote the demand of the United States dollar, because that's the only way they can do trade. Right? This is how the dollarization of the world started, and the financial colonization of the world, which the reserve currency formula does. Now, you realize that this Indian subcontinent has been able to give 27% to the global GDP on an average for 1700 years out of the 2000 years of the recorded last human history that we have. That is 85% of the time frame. Without a reserve currency format, without English language, the language which I'm speaking, without both of them, right? So what has happened with the dollarization of the world? The rest of the world killed the demand for their own currencies to sustain the value for the dollar. What happens with that exorbitant privilege? The printing machine is in the United States. They can print as many notes as they want. You and me, other nations cannot print those, because if we print those, there is no demand for our currencies, which means the entire inflation gets passed on to our population. So the rest of the world cannot print their currencies endlessly like the United States can. So with this format, what the West did was, they kept the financialization with themselves, they kept the consumption with themselves, and the production and manufacturing and pollution is for the rest of the world. Because these guys can print and consume as much as they want. The dollarization of the world started with 1971, where President Nixon selected that date, 15th August 1971, to unhook the gold standard from the United States dollar, which means now all the currencies of the world are printed out of thin air. And only the United States can print endlessly. So if you jot down the charts of GDP and per capita from 1971 onwards, you realize that the entire Western GDP and the per capita is nothing but the printed GDP and the printed per capita. Now in the next book, which is going to be about the Sanatana economics model, I'm also challenging the GDP formula. Because we do believe that the consumption and this formula, which is based on Abrahamic one life concept, where they do not value savings. You will never see any serious economist talking about savings in the West. Why? The government has social benefits to declare. Where does it come from? Printing endless currency. When Indians discuss कि वेस्ट की गवर्नमेंट तो ये बेनिफिट देती है, मेडिकेड, रिटायरमेंट, 401k, income security, right? Nobody is going to tell you that this is because the rest of the world has become the financial colony of the West, with the 59% reserve currency status with the dollar and 20% with the euro currency. This is how it goes on and on. This is about the dollarization of the world. Now the book also covers the de-dollarization process which has started. This August you are going to have a BRICS summit. Now there are naysayers who would say that, what has BRICS done for so many decades? Now how suddenly it will be able to do the de-dollarization process? Please understand that the world has moved to a multipolar order. And when the External Affairs Minister says that the world will be able to jump into the multipolar order only when Asia becomes multipolar, what he means by that is that Russia, India and China are going to clearly demarcate their individual spheres of influence. This is exactly what it means when he says this. When he says that the multipolar world will only come into being when Asia becomes multipolar, which means the negotiations are going to be about what portion of geography Russia is going to influence, what portion of geography India is going to influence, and what portion of geography China is going to influence. Together, India and China giving more than 50% of the world GDP, suddenly coming down to less than 5% with the colonial methods that were employed. You realize what all must have happened during that colonial period. So when we talk about this de-dollarization process, it is also about the decolonization of minds. Now, to continue the United States dollar as a new reserve currency, the West deployed a strategy of what we have discussed in the book as a two buckets theory. So one group of nations who are having a healthy economy are being told कि तेरा बाजू वाला रोग है. Your neighbor is a rogue country. That rogue country needs to be sanctioned, right? And if the neighbor country is going to be sanctioned, you have to continue with the US dollar. This is how the dollarization of the world continued. So when we see that the Saudi Arabia and Iran ties patching up, when we see Saudi Arabia, Iran and UAE becoming applicants to BRICS Plus, when you see, we'll very soon see something about Taiwan, China and Taiwan, and hopefully we'll see something very soon about POK as well. So all the flashpoints in the world which were created to keep the United States dollar in the reserve currency status, कि तेरा बाजू वाला तो चोर है, वो उसको सैंक्शन करना पड़ेगा. हाँ, एक बकेट को आर्म्स और सप्लाई मिलेगा, दूसरे बकेट को सैंक्शन मिलेगा, आप दोनों क्लैश करते रहो. That is how my dollar will continue. All those flashpoints are reversing back, which means the POK will be done, Taiwan will be done, the denuclearization of Iran most probably will be done. And with BRICS Plus, when you see the opposite factions becoming members of BRICS Plus, but now why would Middle East come and be an applicant to BRICS? Understand one thing, that the crude oil is a limited stock 20, 30 years. They don't want to go back to camels. And they have seen how Pakistan comes with a begging ball daily to them. So they have realized that the only method to survive in the world is to de-radicalize. So which is why we are seeing de-dollarization is also equal to de-radicalization, decolonization, de-radicalization, everything happening simultaneously all across the world. When Australia says that we are going to remove the monarchs from our currency, the British monarchs from the currency, right? When California says we need reparations for the colonial torture for the African American community, when we are saying give us Kohinoor back, right? When the Germans and the French are talking about open nature Gurukul education format for the preschool, and in this economic crisis, when the Western children are going back to living with their parents, all these points down boils to one word, which is what we call as Sanatana. So we understand that for the four main factors of production, man, machine, market, and money, we realize that the Western Abrahamic templates are collapsing, not just economics, because how long you would consider everything finite as wealth? You have to realize that the life cycle of birth, endless birth, death, and life cycle, that is what is the Sanatan wisdom based on which your economics also has to function, right? So when we talk about the crisis which artificial intelligence will bring in this world in terms of job losses, you have to realize that the machine factor of production cannot compete with the man factor of production, is supposed to complement the man factor of production. And this is not the wisdom you can expect from the West, because they believe in one life concept. They believe in finite as wealth. They do not believe in life cycles. So you cannot expect this Sanatana economics model to come up from them. This is something which is India's job. How do you expect an infant which is born 300, 400 years back to have the wisdom which the Indian subcontinent has? Right? It is India's time. It is India's time, I believe. I have to cut short, otherwise I'll just keep on speaking. So we'll see the currencies of the world pegging to some real commodities, gold, silver, oil, gas, and probably BRICS plus applicants will also be negotiating about wheat, rice, which means all those sectors which were artificially suppressed by the United States dollar, which is manufacturing, which is farming, which is food processing, which is logistics, defense. All these sectors will boom up, and you will see that a service sector is going to take a huge beating starting from the IT sector, because all these were born with the birth of the fiat reserve currency in 1971. The layoffs that you are seeing in the IT sector is not surprising, because this is the de-dollarization process which is going on. So all the unrequired glorified jobs, they are going to take some beating in this decade, and when this entire churn happens, you will see India would be placed back to that huge level of percentage of GDP. These are the sectors which will come up. And you have to understand one thing, that these sectors were destroyed. Those generations of 50s, 60s and 70s, West ने पूरा एक individualism का wave चलाया कि आप अपने पेरेंट्स से राइट्स मांगे, आप अपने ब्रदर्स से राइट्स मांगे, अपने सिस्टर्स से राइट्स मांगे. उन्होंने आपका जॉइंट फैमिली कॉर्पस तोड़ा, आपकी एग्रीकल्चर जमीन तोड़ी है उन्होंने, बिकॉज वी वर गिविंग 27% टू द वर्ल्ड जीडीपी. आपका एग्रीकल्चर सेक्टर उन्होंने तोड़ा, आपका एंटरप्राइजिंग सेक्टर उन्होंने तोड़ा. राइट? आपको ये वेव इंडिविजुअलिज्म, फेमिनिज्म, वोकिज्म, ये सारे वेव्स चला के, और आपने क्या किया? आपने हक मांगा अपने पेरेंट्स से, जॉइंट फैमिली कॉर्पस तोड़ा, वो कॉर्पस आके कंपनीज के हाथ में रखा और खुद आप जॉबर्स बन गए. दिस इज हाउ द कोलोनाइजेशन ऑफ द वर्ल्ड हैज हैपेंड. So once this de-dollarization process takes place, you are going to see that immediate next would be after the service sector takes a huge hit. The next question would be on the education format, the British classroom format, which keeps you away from the market realities among the four walls so that you don't realize how the market functions. And the only option you got is a job. So this British colonial agenda of converting the entire society into jobbers is something that has to reverse. And sadly, it's going to reverse after job losses. Right? So the next after the job losses which is coming is the questioning of the education format which the Britishers, this was not the education format, उनका intent ये था कि उनको slaves चाहिए थे for factories, जिनको market realities पता ना हो. ये गलती से education format बन गया because they had colonies the world over. So this entire de-dollarization process is linked to de-radicalization, decolonization of minds, and then one fine day, you are going to dig up all the ancient India wisdom that this civilization has. And probably it is our time, by 2047, the next generation would certainly have a Chakravarti Bharat, right? To rule the minds of the world. Europe will be coming back to seek, and this time they are not going to colonize. This time we are going to give them wisdom कि आपको ऐसे life operate करनी है. Thank you.